Everyone, it's here! Role-playing games in psychotherapy, a practitioner's guide by some random bloke called Daniel Hand. Pick up a copy wherever you get your books, and obviously please do leave a 6-star review. I'd much appreciate it. Evening all, Daniel Hand here, RPG therapist, and today we're going to try something a little different. So over the past few weeks we've laid the channel's foundations, we've discussed what RPGs are, why they've historically proven difficult to apply to the therapeutic process, and why we really should make the effort to apply them to the therapeutic process. Now I thought we'd take a break and do something a little more fun. So today I'm going to talk to you about my favourite RPG in existence, the One Ring role-playing game by Free League Publishing, which, if you couldn't guess from the title, is a game set in JRR Tolkien's Middle-earth, where his stories The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings are set. Anybody who knows me will know that I'm a huge Tolkien nerd. Those are my Middle-earth shelves right there, including my first edition History of Middle-earth. I'm one of those nerds whose favourite Tolkien book is The Silmarillion, although actually it's Volume 4, The Shaping of Middle-earth, because I'm all about them maps. And if you told me that I'd never be allowed to play any other RPG again, that would suit me right down to the ground. The One Ring is my happy place. Now, this video is going to have a slightly different format, probably be a bit more free-flowing, probably a bit longer, but generally I want to talk a little bit about what this game is, why I like it so much, what makes it stand out in my opinion, as well as offering thoughts on aspects that we as mental health practitioners might be able to use as part of our client work. This is something I'd actually quite like to do on a fairly regular basis, so if you enjoy this video, do let me know down in the comments and we can geek out over other games in the future. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, share, etc. All done? Then let's go. Right, first of all, a brief history. There have been a couple of different attempts at making a Tolkien-esque RPG. The first, and easily the biggest in terms of sheer scale, was Middle-earth role-playing, or MERP, which came out in the mid-80s. There was also the Lord of the Rings role-playing game, which came out in the early 2000s, and was very much a tie-in to the Peter Jackson movies, which were coming out at the time. In fact, most of the quote-unquote illustrations of that RPG were actually just photos from the film's production. Both of these games have plenty going for them. MERP in particular holds a venerated position in RPG lore and has a ton of material for use in-game. I mean, just look at how detailed those maps are. But they both, in my opinion at least, fail in one crucial aspect. They don't quite capture the feel of Middle-earth. MERP went into minute detail, sure, but it did so by taking massive liberties with the source material. And the LOTR RPG, fairly or unfairly, was largely dismissed as a cash grab. This was at a time where everything had photos from the Lord of the Rings films on them. And it didn't help itself by feeling like a very derivative, standard fantasy game that just happened to mention hobbits and dark lords. Fast forward to 2011 and the world was blessed. Blessed, I say, with the appearance of Cubicle 7's The One Ring Adventures Over the Edge of the Wild. Unlike those earlier games, Tor was immediately hailed for its fidelity to the source material. Everything about it, from the game mechanics, to the character rules, the adventures, to the artwork, felt authentic. It took the major themes of Tolkien's writings, the inevitability of change, the importance of standing up to evil, never giving up hope, recognizing that a major part of life involves struggling with our own baser urges, and gamified them. It took emphasis away from the high, flashy, bangy fantasy of most RPGs and focused more on travelling through the world and surviving the perils therein. And every story, magic item, and character felt like it really could have been envisioned by Tolkien himself. And over the next decade, we got about a dozen extra supplements. I really love the cover of the Darkening of Mirkwood. It screams Middle-earth to me and gives the impression that players' characters, although of course never actually appearing in The Lord of the Rings, might just be off-screen. There's also a fantastic little card game called Hobbit Tales, which can be played by itself as a storytelling game or in conjunction with the RPG proper. I'll be having a look at cards and games in future videos, so stay tuned. I forget when the news broke that Cubicle 7 had lost the rights to the Tolkien material, but I do remember being truly disheartened. I loved the game so much and had had dozens of awesome adventures with characters me and my friends all adored. And I just couldn't bear the thought that some other company would swoop in and destroy all that had come before it. I was also miffed that we never got the long-promised Moria setting. I wanted to run away from a Balrog, damn it! I'd never played any of Free League's games before, so I was a bit sceptical. But then news came that the same designers from the first edition would be involved. Then details about the product started dripping out, then the Kickstarter launched, and in 2022 these beauteous things arrived, and from now on, as far as I'm concerned, Free League can do no wrong. They've already got some supplements out, more are on the way, including the long-awaited Moria, and the starter kit they released might well be the single greatest RPG product I've ever seen. Any fears I once had have long been dispelled. And also, oh my god, remember when I said I was all about them maps? Just look at this! I mean, woof! So, after all that, shall we finally have a look at what we've got here? Yes, let's. Just to start by having a quick look at Cubicle 7's first edition, I think there is so much to love about this product. The colours, the font, the fairy tale-esque illustrations, the companions up against a horde of orcs. It screams Middle-earth. Always judge a book by its cover. This one gets top marks. Especially when you have end papers like this. Again, I'm all about them maps, and this is just heavenly to somebody like me. If you're familiar with The Hobbit, you'll recognise it immediately as Mirkwood, the Misty Mountains. This is where the hobbits and the dwarves came along, went over the mountains, and then drank from the stream, got catched by the elves, and eventually ended up at the Lonely Mountain. But you've also got Lothlorien, Moria, Dol Guldur for those of us who are interested in The Lord of the Rings as well. Great map, love it. Not going to go into too much about the rules for the first edition, largely because this video is long enough already, but the art is amazing. It's all very well laid out, very clear. You get to play as dwarves, you get to play as different cultures of men, bardings, beornings, etc., men of Lake Town, elves, woodmen of Wilderland. My friend played a woodman purely because one of their special feats is they get a dog, and then another character decided to ride the dog into battle one day, for which the dog's owner is still a bit salty. Quite rightly, obviously. Company creation. Each character gets special abilities and traits. Is that the receipt? Yeah. Yes, that's the receipt from when I bought it. Shout out to Eclectic Games. Fellowship phase, which we'll talk about in a moment. Rules for the Game Master, or Lore Master, as this game calls them. Got stats for orcs and giant spiders. And it's got a great timeline of what's going on in Middle-earth at the time. And wonderfully, it has a free scenario at the end called the Marsh Bell, which is just a load of fun and gets you fighting water zombies. So much to love. You've also got some free pre-made characters, and there's a Lore Master version of the map there. Great, great book. Love it so much. And here we have Free League 2nd edition. As you can see, very different look, but how striking and eye-catching is that? And remember the map from 1st edition? This illustration takes my breath away every time I see it. I can't even. It's so nice. As you can see, it looks at a different part of Middle-earth. The 1st edition ended about here, and so we're getting a new focus, a new set of adventures to tell. First thing to say, I love the way Free League organises their contents pages. You've got everything right there in front of you. It's all so clear to read. We need more RPGs doing this with their books. Again, vastly different art, but it feels so Tolkien-esque, doesn't it? And these illustrations will bring to mind Alan Lee and John Howe, who are world-renowned Tolkien artists, and these are clear homages to their work. Shows you how to structure the game, and action resolution. So the main mechanic in the One Ring is, like any other role-playing game, you come up against an obstacle that you need to overcome, you roll some dice. Every time you roll one of these d12s, but this is a special d12. It has an Eye of Sauron on one side and a Gandalf rune on the other. Basically, the Eye of Sauron means 0 unless a special rule is in play, and the Gandalf rune means if you roll it, you automatically succeed at what you're trying to do. In addition, if you got points in certain skills, you roll a number of d6s. Up to, I think, 6. You roll your dice, add up all of the numbers, and if you beat the target number, you succeed. If you don't, you fail. Every 6 on these dice has a special rune, and that points out that if you roll a 6 on these d6s, that means you achieve your task particularly well. So if you pass your check, not only do you succeed, but you succeed with finesse. If you roll 6s and you don't roll enough, you don't surpass the target number, you fail, but you looked good doing it. And that is basically the core mechanic of any One Ring game. Very straightforward. And another important part of the game is these conditions. Hope and stoicism and fortitude are huge themes in Tolkien's work, and so you have rules here to represent them. The key health stat for the One Ring is called endurance, and if you get worn down by the weather or attacks, your endurance goes down and you become weary. If you lose your hope and you just lose faith that things are going to go better, you become miserable, And both of those conditions have certain drawbacks attached to them, as does being wounded if you were hit by a particularly savage attack. More beautiful art. And then we come to creating a character. So first step in character creation is to choose which culture you come from. So in the first edition you had bardings, bjornings. Here you've got bardings, you've got dwarves, you've got elves, hobbits, men of Bree. I love how all of the information is on one spread. You don't need to flick through page after page. It's just here, here. And once you've chosen which culture you're playing as, then you get to choose what kind of role they fulfill in life. So are they a champion, a messenger, a scholar? The cultures and the callings will give each character special abilities and statistics, which we'll have a look at in a moment. You choose what weapons, armor, and equipment you come with, and that's pretty much it. So it's very straightforward. And this is what a One Ring character sheet looks like. Everything revolves around these three attributes: your strength, oddly enough how strong you are; your heart, how much compassion you have, how much fervour, how much spirit; and your wit, how clever and wise and witty you are. These stats are defined by your culture and a few decisions you make during character creation, and these skills, which are all attached to one of the three attributes, you fill out at the beginning of play, but also as the game progresses, your character will get better in certain areas. And as they get better, you fill out one of these boxes, and every time you fill out one of these boxes, you get an extra d6 to add to your d12 whenever you make a roll. So if I have 3 ore, then if I need to roll for ore, I roll the d12 and 3 d6s. Same goes for your combat proficiencies. Are you particularly good with axes but not so good with spears, where you keep track of your war gear and your armor. Rewards and virtues. So as you play, valor and wisdom will increase. You'll become more renowned for your brain and your fighting ability, and as that happens, you'll be given certain special items, or you'll gain certain special abilities. Endurance, if you remember, those are effectively this game's health points, and they will go down rather than up throughout the adventure as you go through tough weather and get the life beaten out of you by orcs. And the hope just gives you a boost when you most need it. The adventuring phase is where you'll spend much of your playtime. This is where you journey from one place to another, fight enemies, and converse with friends. Combat is very theatre of the mind in the One Ring, which I very much appreciate. You don't have to use a map and miniatures to say I'm standing here in relation to this person. No, just in your mind describe what's going on. In each combat, characters decide what stance they're going to take. Are they going to hang back and pepper the opponents with arrows? Are they going to jump into the fray and swing wildly? Are they going to get up close but going to be defensive? It allows for some tactical thinking. But again, it all comes down to d12 plus a number of d6s. There we have endurance loss. Piercing blows are if the enemy's weapons get past your armor, which can leave you wounded. And you can do specific tasks during combat as and when needed. The One Ring also has a very, very interesting set of mechanics for running interactions with higher up members of society. In The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, the characters are often meeting lords of manors, kings, stewards, and having to convey their needs and their goals. And the One Ring does very well at emulating that and making the characters think, well, how am I going to approach this conversation? The interaction is a series of dice rolls using various skills, and if those rolls are successful, then the person they're talking to becomes more open to their argument. If they're unsuccessful, then the person in question loses interest. And obviously the characters and the players have to judge how things are going moment to moment. And the journey rules, again, much of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and The Silmarillion are all about walking from one place to another. And there's a specific sheet designed to help the players get from one place to another. Characters choose different roles and face whatever happens to be in their path. Look at that. The fellowship phase is a lovely little idea where between adventures the characters have been travelling, they've been fighting, they've been negotiating. Now they get to have a rest. This is essentially paperwork dressed up as storytelling. You can go through your character sheets, reset your endurance, give yourself a few more hope points, etc. But you can also level up your character, give them a few more points in certain skills. The way the fellowship phase handles that is it allows the players to narrate both how and why their character heals and progresses and learns and grows. Whereas some games just have the characters suddenly be better, here the players actually understand why their characters are improving. It's just a lovely little addition. And you've got the Lore Masters section, really striking piece of art, I love that one, where you've got just how to run the game, how to use characters' flaws against them, stats for enemies to fight against, all the good stuff. Also, a lovely little addition here, just descriptions of the areas in the world that the characters are going to find themselves in. Great for designing scenarios and helping the characters get from one place to another and help the players visualize what's going on. And just look at those maps, I love them so much. Patrons are friendly NPCs who can offer support and guidance. Landmarks, obviously things to keep an eye out for. And again, we've got a lovely little introductory adventure just to get things off the ground. One slight criticism of this edition as compared to Cubicle 7's is it doesn't have any pre-made characters, but they come in the starter set, so get that as well because it's so nice. And here you have the Lore Masters version of the map. Each of these hexes represents a new challenge for the companions to overcome. And there you have it. So then, the One Ring role-playing game in RPG therapy. Yes. Just yes. I mean, okay, yeah, I'm bound to say that. I'd have crammed this thing into my wedding if it had come out 5 years earlier. But if we take a more measured tone, the One Ring role-playing game in RPG therapy? Maybe? Because all the same problems we looked at a couple of weeks ago apply. There's a lot of work to do in terms of getting the game set up and ready. It needs a group of players to form a company of adventurers. Character creation can be quite involved, and there's a lot of information to keep track of throughout the game's life cycle. Again, it's all a bit much for a one-to-one 50-minute therapy session. So, all in all, as much as it pains me to say it, The One Ring is far from the ideal game for RPG therapy. But there are plenty of things we can take away from it to use with our clients. For one thing, the simple core mechanic is great. Roll a d12 and some d6s and add them up. Most clients, even those on the younger end, will be able to get their heads around that. There are plenty of other options, of course, but this is as good as any. I also like the idea of the fellowship phase, giving the player, or in our case the client, a specific stretch of time to amend and update their character sheet by dressing the paperwork up as storytelling. It gives them ownership of the narrative in a way non-GMs don't normally enjoy. This is to be encouraged with our clients, as it A, gives them more time to spend in their characters' heads, meaning they'll identify with them more and so be better able to empathise with and learn from them. And B, helps them consider various ways the character, and by extension they themselves, can approach both self-improvement and self-care. The fellowship phase really is a perfect example of the fictional frame in action. What I'm really a fan of, though, is the way Tor grapples with the concept of hope. Because, let's face it, the vast majority of individuals who enter into therapy do so because they've run out of the stuff. Life's rubbish, and they can't see how it's ever going to get any better. So, having a system like the One Rings means that we can purposefully reflect upon how the character, and so the client, relates to hope, what it means to them as a concept, what situations they feel it's helpful or important to possess it in, and how they might go about replenishing their stores of it. By giving our clients this pointed look at the very concept of hope, and helping them to explore ways in which they might restore some of it in themselves, we're directly challenging one of the core assumptions that brought them to us in the first place, namely that all hope is lost and there's no point carrying on. Even if Tor gave us nothing else to work with, I personally think that would be enough. But it did give us something else to work with. A very specific process for working through social interactions. When the companions enter into a council, they have to explicitly decide how they're going to approach the situation. Then they've got to assess how difficult it's going to be for them to achieve a positive outcome, and then they have to respond to successes and failures in real time by keeping on their toes and never losing sight of the optimal way of relating to these important NPCs. It's straight up transactional analysis with dice, and is a great way of vicariously exploring the emotions, thought processes, and behaviours that underlie all human relationships, including those in the client's own life. Eric Byrne, eat your heart out. So, what do you think? Like the look of the One Ring role-playing game? If so, please do check it out. I can heartily recommend either edition, so if you find a good deal on the Cubicle 7 version, just take it. You'll have instant access to a ton of material, and it's a great game. But there's no doubting that Free League took that earlier game, chipped away the rough edges, and gave the whole thing a bit of spit and polish. Either way, though, you really can't lose. Most importantly, though, how would you use the One Ring with your clients? Tell us in the comments below. My book, Role-Playing Games and Psychotherapy, A Practitioner's Guide, is available wherever you get your reading material. If you're interested in becoming an RPG therapist, that's a great place to start, link below. You can also sign up for my monthly-ish RPG therapy newsletter, Handwriting, again, link below. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, either with thoughts on the channel, with a view to getting some RPG therapy training, or even if you're a prospective client looking to start therapy, you can find me at my website, monomythcounselling.co.uk. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to see more like this, do give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. So, until next time, take it easy, don't do anything I wouldn't do, and have a good one. Cheers.